Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it.
I help equip Baton Rouge communities with resources that facilitate change.
Who go above and beyond to help it thrive.
I'm educating children in the Bronx on their community history.
During Black History Month, AARP recognizes leaders who uplift communities.
I'm helping the community take their health more seriously.
AARP believes when we unite for the greater good, we thrive together.
In our attendees section, we have a few more people rolling in. So Gwen, you can start when you are ready.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gwen Ingram, and I'm a community ambassador for AARP Virginia State Office. We hope that you will enjoy tonight's program, and we encourage you to learn more about the wonderful volunteer opportunities we have at AARP. We will add several links in the Zoom chat so you can connect with us later this evening or this week. AARP has a wealth of information and resources for you and your entire family. Thank you tonight for your time.
Thank you so much. Gwen is our AARP Community Ambassador here at AARP Virginia, and we love her. I just told her earlier that AARP has us aging backwards, so thanks for being here. I appreciate it. We're on Facebook streaming live now, and I want to welcome all of our Facebook participants so that we can see Michael Carter Jr. I'm excited about this. So let me get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Evans Oliver, and I am the president of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History here in Richmond, Virginia. I am excited to start our series. Well, I guess this is our second, so we're in February, our Cultivate series. And we are sponsored by, the one and only Gwen Ingram, AARP Virginia. And I have here my ASALH board member, Dr. Cassandra Boyd-Willis. She is my backbone of ASALH Richmond, and I want to just give her a shout out because she does so much for our organization, and she's here with if we have technical difficulties, as well as our Janaea Luck with technical difficulties as well. And one more thing, we have our one and very only Caleb Willis, our student ASALH ambassador, who is here, who's been running our videos and doing our technical presentations since we've been chartered in 2020. Guess what? He's 12 years old and he's been doing it since 10. He's our wonderful icon of ASALH. So wanted to give my shout outs now. So there you go. Thank you, Caleb, for being here. I am proud that Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History in 1915, and we are still here today carrying out his mission. And that mission is to promote, research, preserve, interpret, and disseminate information about Black life, history, and culture to the global community. Even though we started in 2020 here in Richmond, Virginia, we've really been doing a good job of trying to do presentations every month, pretty much every month since 2020. AARP Virginia has been by our side to really help us catapult that energy to Richmond and the global community. We started off our Black History Month presentation with a bang. We started off with Ask a Genealogist for our Sunday sit-ins. It was so many people on that call, and we had so many people, they were ready to ask a genealogist. We had 3 world-renowned genealogists on the call to answer questions from our participants all over the United States, and they did it. We even had extra. We had to stay extra time to answer all the questions that had been asked. And we have Wind Down Wednesdays every Wednesday this month. Our last one is tomorrow. And that is, it's with Brian Bullock, and we have Renata Yarborough, a genealogist, and she specializes in North Carolina and Virginia genealogy. So I'm not going to bore you with anything more than what I have to say. I just want to welcome you here today. And I want to move on to our Sunday sit-ins this Sunday, because yes, we had seven presentations and webinars. We have Sunday sit-ins with Dr. Shelley Murphy. If you don't know her, you will know her. She is a world-renowned genealogist as well. And we're going to talk about the Confederate monuments, lynching, and we're going to talk about genealogy as well. So we're going to put those links in the chat so that you will be able to sign up if you want to come. We have the recordings as well. So if you want to have a recording or go into our recordings, go to AARP Virginia, and our recordings are there. This evening, we have our Cultivate series. This ASALH Richmond Cultivate series will focus on the importance of Black health and wellness throughout 2020 and is the national 2020 ASALH annual theme. I am happy to have our Africulture series with Virginia farmer Michael Carter Jr. of Carter Farms. Today, Farmer Michael and Student of the Earth will have a great talk about the deep history between plants and Africa. I have to clear my throat because his bio is enormous, so bear with me here. Michael Carter Jr. is an 11th generation farmer in the United States and the 5th generation to farm on Carter Farms, his family's century farm in Orange County, Virginia, where he gives workshops on how to grow and market ethnic vegetables. With Virginia State University, he works in the capacity of the Small Farm Resource Center Coordinator for the Small Farm Outreach Program. He sits on the board of directors of the Virginia Association of Biological Farmers, Virginia Farm Systems Council, Virginia Agrarian Trust, and Virginia Foodshed Capital, respectively. He serves as a fellow for the Center for Food Systems and Community Transformation. Michael was recognized as a 2020 Audubon Naturalist Society Taking Nature Back Regional Environmental Champion and the 2020 Virginia State University Small Farm Outreach Agent of the Year. He acquired an agricultural economics degree from the North Carolina A&T State University, and he has worked in Ghana, Kenya, and Israel as an agronomist and organic agricultural consultant. That was a tongue twister, but I got through it. He teaches Hennessem, meaning our story, and Africulture, which expounds on the contributions of African Americans and Africa to agriculture worldwide, and trains students, educators, and professionals in African culture, understanding, empathy, and bias recognition. He happily assists his sons in running their respective businesses, the Carter Brothers and Sunnyside Entertainment, when he's not homeschooling his 3 youngest sons. I'm done. Go ahead, Michael. You got the floor. I can't. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm truly honored to be a part of this talk this evening, and hopefully keeping everybody entertained, engaged. I have a lot to share. I have a lot of experiences, and I want to be able to share it with you all today. Just give me a moment so I can share my screen. Again, thank you for allowing me to come in and speak with you all this evening. I'm great humbled just by being asked to speak today. Again, my name is Michael Carter Jr. I am a 5th generation farmer, and we'll get to all of that in a little bit. I represent Carter Farms, my son's business, Carter Brothers, as well as Africulture. And this is our old family farm or family barn on our property. So I want to thank you again. This is my youngest son, Yair. Second youngest son. He would not be called my youngest son. My youngest son, Yair, on one of the hay bales at the farm. I can't seem to keep him off the hay bales. And before I begin, I always like to acknowledge our ancestors. And these are some of mine whose shoulders upon which I stand. my great-grandmother, some of her children. Not all these individuals are deceased, but all of these individuals have made a dramatic impact upon my life, and the reason I can give a conversation about Carter Farms and agriculture today. And I'm sure you all have many ancestors and elders in your family history that you want to acknowledge as well. So we're going to take a moment of silence just to acknowledge those spirits, whatever form or fashion they're in, and just acknowledge their contribution to our lives, whether known or unknown. Selah, Melah, Ashe. And this picture here, I'm gonna point out on the cursor here, you probably can see on your screen, this young man right here is my father. You see we have the same oblong heads. I have the same head as he, my sons have the same head as that. My great-grandmother, my great-aunts, my great-uncles, etc. on a family farm back in 1964. And what is agriculture? Agriculture is the principles, practices, plants, and people of African descent that have contributed to agriculture locally, regionally, and globally. And for most of us, being people of African descent in America, when we think about agriculture and African Americans, almost subconsciously, the first thing we think about is slavery and our relationship to slavery. And when you think about slavery, you think about cotton picking, tobacco, and you don't really, it's not a dignified occupation, unfortunately, based upon that context. So agriculture desires to challenge that notion, helping young people, older people, and others really appreciate the contribution we've contributed to agriculture to encourage more young people, more older people, more people in general of African descent to continue to work in agriculture. And we try to incorporate a lot of history, a lot of plants, in helping people to reconnect back to the earth. The earth is our strength, it's our focus, it's our mother. And when we have that understanding and approach, great things can happen with our family and usually with our family lands. And I was blessed, I think a couple of weeks ago when Dr. Mills was on giving a talk, talking about health. And I'm a strong proponent of health for African Americans, all people, but especially African Americans and people of African descent. And one of the things that we do at agriculture as well is really try to, I call it eating for your ethnic type. So we're growing foods on the farm that are more ethnically inclined to our ethnic racial type. So we grow a lot of African foods on the farm. This year we'll be growing approximately 60 to 65 different varieties of African vegetables. To really see, I'm doing this in spirit of myself and my sons, to really kind of see, how it helps our health in the long term. I strongly believe that if we eat according to our ethnic type, we're going to see our aging slow down quite a bit. We're going to see us more healthier and fighting off some of the diseases and the ailments that many of us in our community would face. And a little brief history about myself prior to that. As you're talking about genealogy, we've done a little bit about genealogy as well. My family dates back to the first plantation in America, the Shirley Plantation. I don't know when they arrived on the Shirley Plantation, but I do know that we do have some correspondence, and we have correspondence with the plantation, that some of my ancestors worked on the Shirley Plantation. And ideally, as we go through some of my history, you'll see Shirley is a surname in my family, as well as Carter. And I'm assuming that most likely my ancestors acquired both of those names from the Shirleys of Shirley Plantation, or Shirley Plantation, and then the Carters of Shirley Plantation. And this is my middle son again, Yair. He's a very active young man on the 350-year-old tree that most likely saw and witnessed my ancestors being there. And it's a very humbling scenario and situation to be able to go back to those places of your past and kind of recognize and see, where your ancestors could have walked. I still carry as a monument a piece of that tree. I have several pieces of that tree that I keep on the altar as a token of appreciation and commemoration for our ancestors who came before us. And November 5th, 1910, my great-great-grandparents, Jefferson Davis Shirley and Catherine Walker Shirley, purchased our property of approximately 150 acres in Orange County, Virginia, for $722.05. 5 years later, my great-grandfather, the gentleman pictured there, Mr. John Lewis Carter, purchased another piece of property of 25 acres, about 3 miles from Shirley, the other property, at 150 acres, back in 1950. So we have 2 parcels that are over 100 years old and are still in the family today. And I'm always gracious and appreciative of the sacrifices that were made to acquire land. At the time, they understood the value of land, and their sacrifice can never be forgotten or forsaken. You can see me in the corner here, and that's me at Carter's Lane. And as we educate individuals, I want us to always keep this definition in mind. When we talk about education, whether it be vocational education, agricultural education, computer science education, technology education, financial education, education should be used as a form or a way to solve the problems of ourselves, our people, and our community. And if we keep education in this perspective, I'm quite confident that we'll start to figure out solutions to some of the issues that we've had for some time. I do a lot of these conversations and talks with various institutions. I did one this morning with various agricultural leaders in Virginia. And one thing that's constant is that we continue to kind of have some of the same challenges that we've had for the last 150, 200, 250, 300 years. And I really want to really push that in this season, as we approach 2022, that we really reevaluate our education to make sure that whatever we're learning, whatever information we're gathering, that is used to solve our problems specifically, because solving other people's problems doesn't always help us. And we want to take a walk back in time a little bit. And I call this my gateway plant to agriculture. And this, I'm sure many of us can probably recognize that leaf at the top of the goddess Shishet. This is the goddess Shishet, Egyptian goddess of wisdom, knowledge, and writing. This leaf here is not a, I guess it's not a Snoop Dogg album cover. It's not, anything associated with Red Man or Method Man or Cheech and Chong, but it is a hemp leaf. And hemp is an African crop. And it's one of those crops that has been demonized in our culture, in American culture, for quite some time. But it does have a tremendous amount of medicinal values. I'm not encouraging anyone to do anything that's going to be against the law. But I will say, if it's legal to consume it in the terms of eating it, I would encourage that. There are fibers and nutrients in the hemp for eating that are beneficial to our bodies. There are numerous varieties of hemp. Matter of fact, in the country of Ghana, they're pretty much the #1 consumer of hemp in the world. But hemp has been in our culture, in African culture, for upwards of probably close to 6,000 to 7,000 years, if not more. This is actually on one of the temples in Egypt, carved in stone. And it was venerated as a great plant of increased knowledge, wisdom, and assistance in writing. And that's why the goddess Shishet has this over top of her head. I want to help us to demystify some of the issues with this plant. It's definitely had a bad history, but at the same time, it can assist us in many ways. I work with the state of Virginia in terms of growing it, both hemp and marijuana. We do grow hemp at our farm. We have a hemp license, and I work with the state of Virginia, the VDACs, to work on the legalization, ultimately the adult use recreation for marijuana, and trying to ensure that Black farmers get a seat at the table and opportunity to grow these things, so we're not left out of the game or the puzzle or the growing or cultivating of the plant. So we're working actively in Richmond to try to make sure that Black farmers aren't left out. And I saw that we have a hemp grower in Floyd, I believe. So yeah, it's a lot of us who've gotten into hemp, so we can have access to the other crops that can come after the fact. Egypt was also the home of cotton and papyrus. Let's see, I don't know if you can see on the screen there, but this is a piece of papyrus. And And many of the depictions that you see on papyrus, as well as on the walls of the pyramids, the Great Pyramids and the other subsequent pyramids around Egypt, you'll find pictures of animals, pictures of agricultural scenes of barley, of wheat, of floods. All those things are part of the culture of Egypt, which means we've pretty much been, Egypt being one of the oldest civilizations in Africa, it's been in our blood, it's been in our cultures for many years, because everybody eats. And many folks will say, there's a certain profession that's deemed to be the oldest profession. And I always try to challenge that and say agriculture is the oldest profession by far. Before you did what you had to do, you ate. And in various religious texts, biblical texts, you find that the first job ever created was a farmer. In the Bible, in the book of Genesis, Adam is created, and his job was to till and keep the garden. And where I'm from, if you're tilling and keeping a garden, most likely you're a farmer. So that was Adam. That was the first ordained job in the Bible. And it makes sense because it became a matter of taking care of the earth. And many other indigenous cultures within Africa, throughout North America, South America, Europe, Australia, Asia, always venerated the earth and the relationship to the earth. It wasn't until modern times that we really started to really look down upon our relationship with the earth and working the earth. But the earth and cultivating of the earth is a very respectable occupation that we really need to work on getting back to. And I know I do. It's kind of what's driven me to come back home. As a teenager, I told myself I would never work in agriculture. I would never be a farmer. And look at me now. And I encourage all of us, if we ever get a chance to touch the land again, to touch the land. We were talking about keeping grandma's land and other things like that, but we want to make sure, and I want to keep helping you to understand the importance of agriculture in our lives, the importance of agriculture in society, and the importance of agriculture in the community. Another African contribution that rarely gets mentioned is the African auroch, which is the wild ancestor of the modern cow. As you saw in that previous slide, there was a hieroglyphic of cows and cattle. The cows derive actually from northeastern Africa. In the ancient Saharians of northeast Africa, they have the African boss or the taurine cow. And this is the basis for about maybe 60 to 80% of the cattle that we actually consume via meat today. This cow is durable, and in many cultures it's considered to be sacred, in Indian cultures, as well as in Kenyan and other Southern African cultures. The cow has a great mystique about it, but the cow is also able to survive throughout various climates in terms of cold weather, hot weather, through various aspects of drought, and why the cow has been, I guess, such a monumental force in agriculture today. And this is one of those African contributions that contributed to the current agricultural system and really the agricultural prowess of the United States. And this right here, I'm not sure if everybody recognizes this particular bean here, but this is the vanilla bean. Vanilla always gets a bad rap. I'm sure like most of you all, when you ever got vanilla ice cream or you said something was vanilla, it was always perceived that that was going to be white. And we got vanilla ice cream. That kind of shaped how we saw vanilla wafers. But vanilla is a very dark plant. I mean, most of us have seen vanilla extract in our pies and our cakes and our confectionery dishes. We know that vanilla extract is very dark. And the gentleman responsible for making sure that we all had vanilla was a gentleman named Edmund Albius, who was born in a place called Saint Suzanne on a little island right next to the island of Madagascar called Reunion Island in 1829. At the age of 12, while enslaved, he invented a technique for pollinating the vanilla orchid by hand, and ultimately acquired the first vanilla beans as we know it today. And out of this, the vanilla industry was born. And Madagascar and Reunion is still one of the most prominent places to grow vanilla. And the technique that young Edmund Albius created is still utilized today, which is why vanilla is so expensive, because it's still hand pollinated. So every vanilla bean that you ever taste, eat, is using the technique of young Edmund Albius. And you see a lot of this African genius in individuals because even in the enslaved state, they were still able to show off their genius because it's naturally in them. Just like it's naturally in you and I, that we have a certain connection with the land, with plants, with animals, with the natural creation. Then once you really tap into it, you'll be surprised what you can create. This gentleman, I mean, I can't even imagine life at this point without vanilla. I am a huge vanilla ice cream connoisseur. And this little invention, and I can't even imagine how you create a technique like that while being enslaved at the age of 12. But it was possible. And I encourage, again, young people, older people to really take a step into agriculture because we've created some things that have had a lasting impact upon society. And you can't have vanilla without chocolate. And this is young or older, Chetakwashi. Generally, when we think about chocolate, usually what we think about is Hershey, M&M Mars, Cadbury Bunnies, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, if you ever go to Hershey Park, I don't know, Godiva. But this gentleman here is considered to be, I consider him to be the godfather of cocoa. Now, cocoa was not an African crop. It comes out of South America. The indigenous nations in South America coveted Theobroma cacao. And that's literally means food for the gods. But it was never utilized in terms of commercialization. It was only utilized in ceremony. It was high valued in South America. Those seeds made it over to West Africa in a little place called Equatorial Guinea. And a gentleman named Chetakwashi went to Equatorial Guinea and worked on a cocoa farm for some years and smuggled some seeds back to Ghana, to the eastern region of Ghana where he started his farm, which is where these pictures are from. And this plant, I mean, this picture here is one of the seeds, one of the trees he planted. This particular tree here was planted 1879. That tree is pushing 150 years old. And Ghana and Mr. Chetakwashi grew out cocoa, shared it with other farmers, and became the leading grower and exporter of cocoa for the next 150 years. Ghana and Ivory Coast, which is Ghana's neighbor, produces about 65% of the world's cocoa every year. Yet there's rarely ever any connection related to cocoa and agriculture, and Africans rather. But in every school, every gas station, every home, we have an African product in our midst with cocoa. And the cola nut. This is another one that no one really shared with us the importance of this West African tree that creates a little nut, a little bean that's very high in caffeine. Extract for this nut was taken by the inventor of a drink that we know of as Coca-Cola and put into Coca-Cola. And that's where we actually get the name cola out of the cola nut. Instead of spelling it with a K, they spelled it with a C because it looked better in the curly Q logo of Coca-Cola. So Pepsi Cola, RC Cola, and all these other colas utilize the cola extract as part of their original formulas. They've gotten away from using cola. Now everything is usually some type of acid or chemical composition, but cola was the initial main ingredient of what we know today as Coca-Cola. Cola is still very much used today in West Africa. You can buy it on any market in West Africa for the most part. This is used as a delicacy, but it's a kind of a delicacy when you provide it to guests. When I was working in Ghana, I was amazed one of the security men would eat these in the night because he worked 24-hour shifts in security. So instead of using 5-hour energy or other Red Bulls and things like that, they use the cola nut and they just bite or nibble on the cola nut and it keeps them up all night. It's the original 5-hour energy. It's the original Red Bull that gives us wings. But this is the cola nut here, and it's still used ceremoniously today in a lot of cultures, especially in West Africa, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Ghana. And this is one of my infomercials, and this is one of those things that I do in all my presentations. I try to drop in a little more information about some of the hidden figures of sorts. And this sister here, Edna Lewis, I highlight her for numerous reasons. One, she's a cousin. So we share a grandfather. My great-grandfather to roughly the 6th or 7th power, Mr. Robert Ellis, her grandfather, started a small community in Orange County, Virginia called Freetown in 1860. And out of this community, Ms. Lewis was born, and she left Orange County and went to New York, where she started working as a dry cleaner, person who ironed clothes. And then she made her way into a restaurant and started cooking. And as they say, the rest of it's history. She started cooking for celebrities, for restaurants, and became known as the Grand Dame of Southern cooking. So if you look at it in today's time, she would be the Gordon Ramsay or the B. Smith or the Paula Deen of Southern cooking. If she were living today, she'd probably have several Food Network shows, because she's phenomenal in terms of what she was able to do with cuisine. Talking to my uncles and other relatives, they say she probably wasn't even the best cook in the area, but she was phenomenal in what she did. She took what she had, went to New York, and created a legacy that's unmatched by anyone else. She's featured on the book of stamps of the culinary geniuses of the United States of America. That includes James Beard, that includes Julia Childs, and then my cousin, Sister Edna Cook, is also on those stamps as well. Edna Lewis, I'm sorry. She has numerous cookbooks out. Edna Lewis in Pursuit of Flavor, The Taste of Country Cooking, the Edna Lewis Cookbook that she's created. She's since deceased. She died in 2006. But she is a family member of ours. She didn't have any children, so we continue to keep the legacy of her alive through these conversations and just kind of sharing her expertise, her brilliance, and all that she did in terms of education of how to cook foods in season. This little plant here is one of my favorites because it's probably the easiest plant to grow. It's called okra. That's what we know it as. In Ghana, they refer to it as okro. But the real name of it is quite, and you'll get it or understand what the real name is when I explain it to you. But in Swahili, not Swahili, but in Wolof, in the Senegal, Gambia area, where this plant is somewhat originated from, they call this plant gumbo. So okra is really gumbo. So when you say you're eating gumbo, generally you are eating a okra stew. So if you're in New Orleans, if you're in Mississippi, if you're in the Bayou of Alabama, and they're preparing gumbo, our ancestors understood they were preparing okra stew or gumbo stew. This gumbo, and gumbo kind of took a name of its own and a character of its own, and became a whole different dish outside of just standard okra stew. But gumbo is a culinary staple for many folks in the Bayou area of this country. The seeds that we grow date back to roughly 1640, 1650. We grow a variety of okra at our farm called Freeman okra. That supposedly have come by the enslaved here and was kept by individuals in the Catawba Nation in Southwest Virginia and Northwest North Carolina. And we look to have some of these seeds for sale next year. We'll be growing them out again for seed, as well as probably be growing about 6 different okra varieties this year. But this is one of the great ones, and okra that takes nothing to grow. Okra is, it's an acquired taste, because I think the mucus nature of the plant definitely is not as popular as many, but it's extremely healthy for you. It helps to aid in the fighting of reducing the sugar in your body to fight off diabetes and high blood pressure, among other outstanding benefits. And once we get back to eating more so for appetite, I think we'll see again the benefits of eating a lot of these foods. This next crop is a cousin of okra. Another one that we grow at our farm that has a tremendous value, had a tremendous value in America, especially pre-colonial America. And this is called jute leaf. Jute is like I said, a cousin of okra. They both have that slimy, I hate to use the word slimy, but that slimy mucus-like but actually residue when you cook it. So jute leaf or palava, or in most Middle Eastern countries, or Northeastern African countries, they call it malakia. In other areas, they may call it Jew's mallow, is another thickener, another great green that does a tremendous job of this, a lot of nutrients in it. But this is also used to create ropes and bags and things like that. So in the colonial times, jute was grown a lot to create to make ropes, to make sails, especially before the advent of cotton. Jute was a tremendous and versatile crop that can be used both for eating as well as for textile purposes. And it's another one that's extremely easy to grow. Insects don't bother it too much. And it has a lot of history connected straight to West Africa. And another fine West African crop, Amherst Callaloo. We grow quite a lot of this on our farm, and I'm sure if you have any type of land, large expanses of land, you probably have seen a crop like this, or its cousins, which we call poke salad or pigweed. Pigweed is usually what we know it as here in America, which is a weedy version of the amaranth or the callaloo. Yeah, the flower is beautiful. And it's a tremendous nutrient-rich green that needs to be incorporated in everybody's diet. I know we love collard greens. I know we love some of the other greens, but this one needs to come in with those greens as well. The nutritional values of this surpasses some of the greens, a lot of the greens that we eat presently. It's a great source of iron. It's a great source of calcium, of vitamin C. And one thing that's really good about these plants, both the jute and this one, is they're adaptable and they are drought resistant. And what I find is that when you have these plants that are drought resistant or that can survive almost anything, it puts in your DNA to kind of be able to survive almost anything. And we, being sons and daughters of these plants of sorts, we kind of take on the personality of these plants. So I'm amazed on my farm, you'll see a crop like this, various other African crops that I grow, and I see its cousin. And its cousins have adapted to their new environment, being able to adapt to the cold, being able to adapt to the insects or the weather or the soil conditions. And with these, you know, you'll find various amaranth that has thorns and spikes on it. And I refer to us as genetically modified Africans, where we've kind of had to modify our genetics to survive this environment, to survive the treatment that we've survived as Africans in America for this many years. We've adjusted. And likewise, many of these plants have adjusted their DNA to create more thorns, be a little more thorny, be a more tougher, because this environment requires it of us, very much like the African American, where we've had to adjust to the ways of this environment just to sustain and to live. And, you know, this is another great, highly nutritious plant in the Caribbean area. They call it callaloo. I'm sure many of us may have remembered the Cosby Show episode when they had the callaloo pot, and the gentleman from St. Croix, I believe it was, who was cooking the callaloo. And this is a cultural icon that coming from West Africa, coming through the Caribbean, and then hopefully into your kitchens this coming spring and summer. Cotton and indigo. These are two crops that really have been made, been the fabric of our nation. The whole denim jean industry comes from these two crops of cotton and indigo, and combining these two. And both of these are African crops as well. If you ever see mud cloth, you see some indigo cloth as well, which is very much like mud cloth, but a bluish color. These seeds were also taken from West Africa, brought along with the enslaved who came here as well, and grown here and survived. And you find a lot of the indigo grows more so in southern part of states, from maybe South Carolina on down. Cotton generally grows from roughly Virginia on down. And cotton was a major African crop, as most of us know. Cotton was king, as they say. And another Afromercial related to cotton and the genius of our individuals who came before us. This gentleman here, his name is Lewis Lattimore. Lewis Lattimore invented the carbon filament for the light bulb. In inventing this carbon filament for the light bulb, from the stories I've heard, that he was inspired by enslaved Africans that he saw. Mr. Lattimore, his family left or escaped, ran away from their plantation in Norfolk, Virginia, and made their way north to Boston, Massachusetts, where he was raised. But he called, when he did see Africans, they would utilize cotton seeds and light them. And recognizing this, he created a carbon filament made possibly out of cotton seed or cotton filaments to be able to create light. Thomas Edison was also creating a light bulb at the time and put a patent, but his light bulb got too hot and ultimately blew out. Mr. Lattimore's patent with the carbon filament made the light bulb viable. Without it, we would probably still be in the dark. And there was, and his carbon filament light bulbs lasted the test of time. I'm not sure they're still running, but the way he created it, they lasted. There's some in California that I've seen that are supposed to have been lasting for almost 100 plus years in terms of a light bulb. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother time, but he created them to last. Okay, now we're gonna get down into, and it's dinner time. You can tell I'm probably getting hungry. So we're gonna throw a couple of these things here. This does not help with my hunger at all. But this is one of my favorite dishes and one of my favorite plants. This is called cowpeas. Many of us know them as black-eyed peas in Ghana. In West Africa, they may be known as peas or beans. So we see the raw cowpeas to the left. And they called them cowpeas because the colonial people here did not see the value of them, so they fed them to the cows. They didn't want to eat them. But hey, I can't imagine not eating these beans. And then to the right, my last trip to Ghana, which was last 2 months ago. This dish here is called red. This is by far one of my favorite dishes, at least up there in my top 3 favorite dishes. And red is a combination of black-eyed peas, palm oil, and what they call ripe plantains or red plantains. So the red of the palm oil and how they determine the red plantains, they call red, is where they get the term red from. We have a similar dish. Doesn't taste quite the same, but I strongly believe that our enslaved ancestors maintained this tradition of trying to ensure that we had these beans in our diet. So every 1st of January, New Year's Day, without fail, I think in anybody's household, we're cooking black-eyed peas with stewed tomatoes. Our version of red. We don't, in America, we don't have access, especially didn't have access then to palm oil or ripe plantains. So one of the things that we would have had access to potentially was tomatoes. And the colonists, the colonizers here did not see the value of tomatoes. They thought tomatoes were poisonous. So they let the enslaved people have them because they didn't think they had any value. And I'm sure our great mothers and great fathers put those dishes together to make what we know today as our staple for January 1st, New Year's Day. I see Carla Hamilton has a question, a hand up. I'll entertain a question if that's okay.
That is perfectly fine. Go ahead. She has her hand up. Let me put her in. Oh, I won't be able to bring her in. So Carla, if you can put your Q&A in the Q&A box, and then we'll be able to read it to Michael. That'll be great. Thank you so much.
So if you ever get a chance to go to West Africa, I'm going to encourage you to try red. And then you can testify to me my line about its deliciousness. It's an outstanding dish. Cook stewed tomatoes this weekend. So if you cook them this coming weekend, I'll come over, we can share them. I'm a big stewed tomato and black-eyed pea lover. This is another African plant that's kind of come in, and we're going to go into a little bit more about this and some of its history. But this particular plant here, sweet potatoes, we all know sweet potatoes. My grandmother is a master, I think she has a doctorate degree in sweet potato pie baking, just dynamic. And this gentleman here, Mr. Cliff Slade, I call him Uncle Cliff. He went to school with my father at Virginia State University. And it's kind of the sweet potato guru for Black farmers. You can go to his website there, Slave Farms, where he has, he sells about maybe 10 to 12, 15 different varieties of sweet potatoes. And one thing that I noticed here is that we don't eat the leaves. In Ghana, or actually in Liberia and Sierra Leone, they don't eat the tubers as much as they eat the leaves. The leaves have a tremendous amount of vitamin A because of the beta carotene in the sweet potato, and it's a very tasty green. So I encourage you this season, if you can grow some sweet potatoes or get access to a sweet potato grower, instead of feeding these leaves to the hogs or to the pigs, take a couple of them, take them home and fry them up yourself. These greens are highly nutritional, highly available, and they grow plentifully. Yeah, and there you go. In Hawaii and other cultures, eating the leaves is part of the process. And I think we just got to get back to eating the leaves and the stems. They contain a whole lot of nutrition, I think, that would help to assist us in gaining more nutrition in our diet overall. But, sweet potato is great, and the leaves are just as good as the sweet potatoes. And I bring this gentleman up because he doesn't get enough credit for his contributions to agriculture. Because many of us around this time of year, we hear about George Washington Carver. Nobody really puts a doctor to his name, but he is a PhD. He's a Dr. George Washington Carver. And then we also enjoy, we also just hear about him and his peanuts, maybe some sweet potatoes. He did all these things, 300 different inventions with the peanut. Well, and that's all well and good. He did do all those things, and he's a dynamic genius. But the peanut was not his, he had a reason for doing it. And they really tout him as a savior of the agriculture economy of the South, meaning he saved America because, the agriculture economy of the South was the driving force for America in the late 1800s to early 1900s. He's the pioneer of environmental conservation. He innovated and created things that ideally were African principles and indigenous principles that he incorporated into the agricultural landscape. Unfortunately, the agriculture students of these lands were run off these lands and the indigenous. And when they were run off, all that knowledge was run off with them. So they could teach us how to maintain, the soils, but again, the indigenous cultures will push off of these lands. And the individuals who were in control of these lands, they had no idea how to maintain the lands. They only knew how to try to make money. So he created something called crop rotations, where he rotated crops around. So you had cotton one year, then you have soybeans, then you have sweet potatoes. And in this rotation, you start to build up the soil as opposed to deplete the soil, which is what growers had been doing, plantation owners had been doing for the last 150 years. Where they said the land was done, it was finished. You had to leave the land. The plantation owners would ultimately leave the land they were growing on and go utilize or acquire other lands to grow on because they didn't know how to use crop rotation. So Dr. Carver reintroduced crop rotation to the American agriculture system. He also created or introduced hilling and raised beds for cultivation of sweet potatoes. He really created cooperative extension through his Jessup wagon and his Carver bulletins, where he would send out, create little pamphlets to send out to farmers. And this Jessup wagon was a little wagon financed by a gentleman named Jessup, who, a wagon or cart that would go out to the rural areas and explain to the farmers how to grow or what they not explain to how to grow per se, but this research that we're doing in Tuskegee. He's also the godfather of organic agricultural cultivation. By encouraging this crop rotation, you had a bigger influx of nitrogen in the soil, which started the whole organic movement of growing without chemicals and doing it through crop rotations. He was an agricultural chemist, creating so many different compounds out of various agricultural products, especially the peanut. He created the first biofuel. During the 1901 World Fair, there was a gentleman named Rudolph Diesel. You may have heard of, maybe not him, but his invention. He invented the diesel engine, and he utilized Dr. Carver's peanut oil to run the engine. Small fun fact, I had a diesel truck at one point, and I used to run it off vegetable oil because of what Dr. Carver did, and showing that it could be done. A diesel engine can actually run off vegetable oil, ideally peanut oil. He also created, or was a value-added product innovator, and this is where all of the inventions of the peanut started to come from, was the value-added nature. There were so many peanuts in surplus, and individuals did not know what to do with the peanuts. So he created different uses for the peanuts. And in his Carver bulletins, he would share with individuals how to create the different compounds, the different dishes with the peanuts. So he created peanut, used peanuts to create ice cream, to create milks, to create paints, and a paint that actually was, when they did the chemical testing of his blue paint, his Egypt blue paint, it was the same composition as the paints that were used in ancient Egypt on the pyramids in Egypt. So he tapped into another type of African consciousness. And not lastly, but one of the last things was, he's featured, he is the second African-American to be featured on US currency. So he is on a 50-cent piece. Him and his, I want to say, mentor, colleague, his employer, Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington is actually on the first US currency, which I think is dated 1950, and then Dr. Carver and Booker T. Washington on a coin together in 1952. I'm sorry, and this is a quarter, 1952 quarter. But Dr. George Washington Carver, as the young people say, they got to put respect on his name. He's more than just the peanut guy. He was a dynamic individual who overcame a lot. I can't imagine how he overcame some of the things, being enslaved, and then soon after that being castrated. And as a man, there has to be a certain way, and then on top of that, creating the type of genius that he was able to create, and being loyal to Tuskegee and Tuskegee's values and principles in terms of educating the young people as opposed to going out and finding money. Dr. Carver, we're eternally grateful for your efforts and your contributions, and can't say that enough. And this is a little more of the groundnut, or the peanut, and the Makuna bean. The groundnut is the big brother of the peanut, or probably one of the same. The groundnut grows in West Africa, and it was one of those that were brought here. And again, it's a legume or nitrogen fixer. And these were some of the practices that African folks were doing in West Africa prior to them being kidnapped and taken and being subject to 340 years of warfare against them and their lands and their people. The Makuna bean is another bean that we're growing at Carter Farms. Doesn't have as much edible purpose uses, but it does have a great soil use. We use it in rotations at the farm. And this is just highlighting George Washington Carver Regional High School. My grandmother, this young lady right here, went to school at. That was a segregated school, started in 1948. With my grandfather, got his GI Bill certification from, and my grandmother and numerous aunts and uncles went to school and graduated from in Cultivate, Virginia. This gentleman here, his name is Henry Blair, another dynamic agriculturalist who was able to create a seed planter. And this gentleman, there's not a lot of good history about him. I'm not even sure if that's him in the picture or not. There's been debates about that as well. But he was an enslaved African out of Silver Spring, Maryland, who created a seed planter in 1854. He was the second African-American to hold a patent. After he acquired his patent, a law came out. Someone took not him to court, but other African-Americans who were trying to get patents to court. And it was explained to them, and a judgment came out saying that African-Americans, while they were enslaved, could not hold a patent, that only their owners could hold a patent. And this remained the case till well after the Civil War in the 1870s and 1880s. Where African Americans started to get patents again. And patents is a whole nother conversation, but technology transfer is key to wealth building and transition. And this is, Gwen, you ready from Culpepper? Very good, you probably know the Carver School. We're probably related or have some cousins or something. This is statistics that kind of drive me in my work. This is what I call the Black Farmer Extinction Level event. This is Virginia statistics from 2021. We'll be doing 2022 later on in the year when the statistics come out. But we really want to increase the number of Black farmers that we have. We're an endangered species. And within the endangered species, you can't just save it by raising money for it or trying to preserve it. You have to really change the environment that created its ability to be endangered. So we have to create how we view agriculture. If you look at this right here, some of these numbers here, $3.96 billion were produced agriculture products in 2017. Black farmers received 1.1% of that or less. 91, most farms on average produce about $91,000. Black farms, 43,000. The average farm in Virginia, 180 acres. Average size of a black farm, 78 acres. And you can see on and on. The average age of a farmer in Virginia is 59. The average age of a black farmer in Virginia is 63. So it's become my passion for this season and my work for this season to try to increase our numbers in all the good things and bring down our numbers in all the bad things. Because as stated in the beginning, agriculture is one of the first mandates from the Creator, as well as responsibilities for our community and our families to be able to provide for them. Our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, our grandmothers and great-grandmothers always had a relationship with the soil, always canned peaches or canned string beans, was always in the field working. I'm pretty sure many of us can remember shucking corn, snapping beans, picking the ends off string beans or stringing the string beans, all those things that you would do with grandma, that you do with grandpa. We've got to really return back to those things because the health of our families and our communities depends upon it. So this is some of the things we're doing to kind of preserve our next generation. That gentleman to the left is my father, Michael Carter Sr. That's my youngest son getting his tractor lesson. I'm not sure if he was driving that day or just taking a picture, but he'll be driving it soon if he wasn't that day. And we keep them in the fields, keep their hands in the soil. They don't always necessarily want to be there, but we try to have them there. And the more they're there, the more they appreciate what it is that they're doing. They can come in and actually teach and train others. In this season, they'll be guiding various tours on the farm, as well as showing individuals how to grow. We have several schools who come, every summer and every spring, and they can kind of guide them on how to do the certain things we need to do at the farm. And that's a couple more pictures of my father and my uncles and us preparing some of the fields. And these are some of your marching orders. So in this case, you need some instructions about what to do, for 2022. First and foremost, support Black farmers, support local farmers, support small farmers. Don't worry about trying to support me as much. I don't mind it. I appreciate it, but I'm quite sure that there's probably Black farmers in your area who could utilize the support. I always encourage supporting Black-owned businesses to the fullest and financial institutions as much as possible, and be patient with them. Many times we just don't have the infrastructure, the administration, and other things in place to provide the exemplary service, or we make mistakes. I know I make a lot of mistakes in my business, but I appreciate when folks can be understanding. And I'm usually a 1 or 2 or 3 man operation. Racialized, Black-owned racial understanding, implicit bias, and other uncomfortable conversations with companies like agriculture. We do a lot of trainings with various individuals. The next one is probably one of the most important. Write a will. If you really want to show love to your family, prepare your will and prepare it properly. Don't just write it to yourself or write it and then put it in the refrigerator like I've heard other folks say they had experiences with. Write a will, go, get the witnesses, get lawyers, talk to your family. This is probably one of the most best ways to transfer wealth and to create or continue to have generational wealth. And, if you have a lot of wealth, will it to some other folks. I always tell, white people especially, will it, will a couple of 100,000 to some other folks. And I'm not sure who heard this, but I've heard that, folks have been starting to do that a lot more. That helps to level some of the playing field when you talk about equity. To me, you cannot, get equity until you have some level of balance or parity. And the last couple of ones you have there, support the Black Farmer Fund, invest in your own education about race and racial dynamics, try to place your understanding in the shoes of others' experiences. And I want to go ahead, I'm going to wrap up now to kind of allow for some questions. I'm sure there's quite a few.
Excellent. I was waiting for this. I know you had given me a little bit about what you were going to talk about, but thank you, Michael Carter Jr., for bringing in your wealth of knowledge about Africans and African-American farmers and just people in general. I want you to show your slide. I believe you have a couple of slides with your information about how they can contact you. Yep, that'll be great. And so what I know about Carter Farms is that, yes, I saw some information in the chat regarding whether you can purchase things from Carter Farms. So Carter Farms, he has a lot of African vegetation there. But of course, he probably grows it for his sons too, because what, you have 4 sons?
I have 4 sons, yeah. And we do grow or sell seeds. So I do grow a lot for seed. So we grow them, let them grow out the whole season so we can have seeds for next season.
Oh, wonderful. So Carter Farms has seeds. I've seen it on the website as well. And so let's support Carter Farms, because what I do know is that, you're not getting away from the Richmond, Virginia, because that's where I am. I'm kind of in the suburbs, but we're ordering seeds from you guys and from your sons, because I support young Black businesses as well. But I do want to say, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, and I'm going to go into the questions, but I love the dynamic that you had, because we hear your sons in the background. You're homeschooling them yourself, and we hear them in the background. I don't know whether that's the dishwasher or the dishwasher laundry, but it's all good. We embrace everything that you're giving us right now. The other piece to it, I don't like beans, but I want to try the red. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, because I grew up in the city of Richmond, but my mother came from Cumberland County, Buckingham County. And my kids know how to shuck corn, and they know how to snap beans, and they know how to, I don't know whether we call it pick collards, but they know how to do that.
Pick collards.
So, yes. So what I want to do is 8:04. So I know we said this is going to be from 7 to 8. So for all of you all who want to log off, please do. And we want to thank you all for being here today. We want to thank you. We have other things going on with Michael Carter. So this is not the only time we're going to have Michael Carter. We have Michael Carter, and let me see if I can see this because I have my glasses on. March 22nd at 7 o'clock, we're going to have gardening with Farming Basics, historical links of how we've educated away from the farming strengths. I think I got that right. And we have April the 26th at 7 o'clock, how to fix the knowledge gap, Black farmers education. And then on May 27th at 7 p.m., we have what to do with grandma's property, heir's property. So if you have property out there and you have others with it, you can go tune in on May the 24th, and he's going to help you with that. But for all of you all who have to sign off, please do. And I'm going to ask you, Michael Carter, can we stay on for about another 10 minutes so we can answer the questions that are out there right now? I'll give you 20 to 25. All right. For as long as they want to talk, I'm okay. Yeah, so there are questions. People are in the chat. I'm excited because we have people from California. The furthest away is California, but we have Minnesota, we have Virginia, and that's what we wanted to do here at ASALH Richmond with our participants. We wanted to show Richmond, Virginia, but we wanted to entertain everyone else. So let's get to the questions. I know I saw, and I'm not sure, someone asked something about sweet potatoes. Mm-hmm. Are sweet potatoes actually African, or is there a discrepancy between sweet potatoes and yams of African origin?
Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, they are still of African origin. There's I'm a kind of backstep a little bit, because there's a misnomer in terms of how we consider things to be of where they're from. There's a gentleman named Carl Linnaeus who started the binomial nomenclature, which identifies crops and where they're from. But he also wrote a book called Systems of Nature, which was the first book of kind of scientific racism. So this man didn't really give a lot of credit to anything coming from Africa. So to say, certain crops, were they from Africa, were they from other places, it's hard to tell because his bias was definitely in all of his writings. where if they were found there, they would assume that this crop is too good to be from Africa. It's probably from India. It's probably from South America. It's probably from somewhere else. But I would say that, you know, the African, just living on the continent and seeing how those crops grow, I would very well say the sweet potatoes are there and are from there, but also the yam. The yam is definitely, the African yam is definitely from there. And I think the names got confused when they came here. We started calling yams, started calling sweet potatoes yams. And that became a marketing tool because yams are much bigger than sweet potatoes. So if you had a yam, you had a big tuber. And that was, you know, so people say, I want them yams, as opposed to I want those sweet potatoes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. I know that people have seen that on the next Netflix special. Of course,
High on the Hog.
Yep, High on the Hog, talking about yams and sweet potatoes. And what they don't know is that we're going to do something with that with you, but that's another conversation. So that's new for you. So yeah. So we have another question. I live in Roanoke, Virginia, and interested in starting a small balcony container garden. Any suggestions for starters?
Start small. If you have a container garden, I suggest getting a small bag of soil, doesn't matter what kind, from whatever grocery store, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, whatever else, and utilize the salad containers that you get your salad or spinach in. After you finish the salad or spinach, take a push pin and push holes inside the container to create holes for air and for water, the water to ooze out. Fill it up with soil, plant your seeds there, and start from there. Unless you want to buy a larger, more traditional container, but you can, recycle or repurpose that salad container. It's great to get started with because you can utilize, fill it up about maybe 3/4 of soil, put seeds in it, cover the seeds up, and depending on what you're growing will determine how many seeds you want to put in it. If you're doing leafy greens, I would encourage maybe 6 to 8 seeds, maybe even fewer than that. If you're doing something like tomatoes, 1 or 2 seeds. Cover, once you plant the seeds, cover them up lightly with soil, water them, and then take that same lid from the container and put it on top of it. That's going to create the perfect environment for those seeds to germinate. After about maybe 4 to 5 days, the seeds will germinate. Once you see the seeds germinate, take the lid off and place it in a sunny area, not too cold, or at least by a window, and allow it, and it start to grow. And water it as needed. I would say water it every other day, every 3rd day. Check for moisture, which means just using your finger. If it feels moist, don't water it, because plants and plant roots, they need air to grow. And too much water doesn't allow for airflow. If it's too much water, that means there's not enough oxygen going in, so they'll die from being, like us, from being drowned. So if you keep it watered, keep it in a sunny location, keep it warm, it'll do well for you.
Thank you so much. The one thing that I really garner from you is that I looked at my genealogy, and all of my ancestors were farmers, every last one of them, and they were enslaved. So I can understand, even though I don't really know, but I understand what you're talking about. So I appreciate your information today. So I'm going to ask you to read Tony Guy's information because you say you want to answer that live. Do you see it in the Q&A?
Let me check. I don't see it in the Q&A, but let me check
Tony
Guy about the Sioux are starting to raise and breed buffalo because that is what they were accustomed to eating. Their obesity rates have started to fall. Could we raise African auroch to feed our people the way cattle are fed is a problem. Totally agree. That you probably won't be able to find another African auroch, but there are other varieties in Kenya. I'm looking to acquire 1 or 2 for those purposes. There are not many here. I've heard there are a few in Florida and some other places. So I'm working with the Livestock Conservation Service to kind of figure out how I can get a couple of African cattle. And then what's key in what he said in that is how they feed the cattle. And, how most cattle is fed is it's usually, starts off on a pasture, grass, but then they use finishing utilizing corn or soybeans or some type of grain. And that's not how cows don't naturally eat beans. They don't naturally eat corn. They naturally eat grass. Their stomachs have a rudimentary system in it. So they have two stomachs, and they grind up the grass and send it to another stomach to digest, and then send it back up, and then it digests through. So how they eat really is they cannot process grain. It's like us eating dairy, for some of us eating dairy. It provides issues with how we grow. It affects some of the aspects of our body. So when you give cows grain, they have muscle and tissue, but the nutrients just aren't there. So how, feeding them is critical. So even if you can get African cattle, you still will need to feed them in very much an African way. And the grasses in Africa are quite different than the grasses here. There's elephant grass, there's Disonium, there's Napier grass. There's other grasses that these cattle eat that may not do as well here, but at our farm, we're going to look to do some of those grasses and hopefully bring in one or two of the African cattle to kind of do the experiment on. And then we can let you know, Tony, how that works out for us. I'm a vegan, so I won't necessarily eat the cow, but I can keep you updated.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's wonderful. We have one question here from, let's see if I can read this. I have a small plot of land in West Virginia. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, it's clay dirt. How can I determine if the land can grow food such as callaloo and mushrooms?
All right, so I'm gonna give you a agronomy lesson. One, dirt in agronomy is a 4-letter word. So we want to call it clay soil. And it's the same type of soil I have here. I have a Tatum clay soil at our farm. Very red, very rich. But ideally, if you can grow grass, you can grow anything. So callaloo especially can be grown in clay soil. I've done it. I'll do it again this year with no problems. They do not have callaloo, for lack of a better term, is probably the most aggressive and most active weed. Or we consider a weed because of how it grows. You drop a seed down with callaloo, it's guaranteed almost to grow. The Amaranth has a unique growing style and pattern where I haven't seen it not grow in any place. And as long as it gets water and soil and heat, it will grow and grow well. And it doesn't have too many pest pressures on it. So I encourage you can go to Carter Brothers site. You can order some callaloo seeds, some Amaranth seeds. We'll ship them to you and you can grow them this spring. What I would encourage you to do is don't plant it until after Mother's Day.
Mother's Day is what you've told me over and over again. And I love that because we're in a group on Facebook, Michael Carter and I, and he actually gave the I don't know, maybe a recommendation of not planting before Mother's Day. And, because we're novice at all of this growing and planting. There are some people who are hungry to plant and to grow and, it's been warm. We had a really warm area before Mother's Day, April to May. And it was like the week before Mother's Day and it was a frost and people lost everything. And you didn't say it because you didn't come on and say, I told you so. You did. You were very gracious, and I appreciate that. One of the reasons why you're here today. But it was like, he said it. He's a farmer. He's been doing it. He has 11 generations of it. But you have to learn. Sometimes we have to learn. So I appreciate that. So I'm growing all my raised beds before Mother's Day to plant after Mother's Day. So we have one more question, and let me see if I can find that question here. And
while you look for the question, let me give you clarity on the Mother's Day as well.
Sure.
You can grow some cool weather crops before Mother's Day. And your cool weather crops would be lettuce, spinach, possibly kale and collards. You can do those beforehand because they are frost resistant. So if it's a frost, it actually helps the taste. It won't. Okay. Those are European crops. Now, your fruiting crops, your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your peppers, they are more tropical crops, so a frost would definitely kill them.
And I appreciate that because, the frost didn't kill my collard greens. Guess what killed them?
Mm-hmm.
Rabbits.
Rabbits,
Rabbits killed my collard greens. I mean, they ate well, and they killed my squashes. So thank you for that. I know beetles will kill. I saw you had posted something. Michael Carter is excellent for information. Follow him on Facebook. Go to his carterfarms.com. Purchase his seeds. He has some really heirloom seeds that are not from here in America, and so I want to say that to do that. Now, if he runs out, because normally, don't you run out?
I do run out. Probably going to run out next.
Okay. So you might run out today. But if he runs out, what will happen is that he's so well connected, as you heard from his bio, that he can help you find other seeds and information and people in this Virginia area. Maybe not so in Virginia, but he can help you out.
In Virginia, there's other great seed growers out there. Someone mentioned Seven Springs Farm, and shout out to them. They do great in terms of pest control and other supplements or inputs for agriculture, and they're in Florida County, Virginia. There's Southern Exposure Seed Exchange, which is in Louisa, which is right around the corner from me. They are legendary for their heirloom crops. There's a new seed collective that we assisted in helping to get started. They really did a lot of the work. I just talking every now and then. But they're called Ujamaa Seed Collective. UGAMAA Seed Collective. Google them. Their site just launched in January. They're selling seeds as well. They are selling some of the seeds we grew. So we grew out some seeds for them. There's True Love Seeds in Philadelphia. There's So True Seeds in North Carolina. There's Utopia Seed Collective. It's a lot of seed.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to get that information from you, and we'll send it out to everyone here so they can have that access to that information, because information is key. It is right now 8:19. We're over. That's a good thing. But I'm getting text messages, emails. I'm getting all this on and they're telling me that I need to close it up. So I want to thank you, Michael Carter Jr., for being here today. We have 3 more, and I'm going to say it one more time. I have my glasses on, and maybe I can't read it, or maybe I can't. So March the 22nd at 7 p.m., Michael Carter Jr. will speak on gardening and farming basics, historical links of how we're educated away from our farming strengths. On April the 20th at 7 p.m., this is every month, Cultivate series, ASALH, Richmond, Virginia, because that's what we do. We have how to fix the knowledge gap, Black farming exhibition. And then our last series with Michael Carter Jr. on May the 24th at 7 p.m. is what to do with grandma's property, hair property. We all have property somewhere. We don't want to just give it away. Listen to Michael Carter Jr. as he tells you about that. Thank you so much for being here today. We have a wind down Wednesdays tomorrow with Brian Bullock, and we're talking about genealogy with Renata Yarborough, and we have a small documentary for that. We've put that information in the chat. If you do not have that information, you can email us at asalhrva.info@gmail.com, and we'll shoot that information out to you. And on Sunday, we have a Sunday sit-in. We're doing big things here in Richmond, right? Sunday sit-ins, we're talking about lynching and the monuments, the Confederate monuments and genealogy. So if you have any questions or concerns, please email us one more time, asalhrva.info@gmail.com. But don't forget to go out to Carter Farms, Carter Brothers, and Africulture. You see those websites there right now, and he has a plethora of information. And if he doesn't, email him and he'll be able to get back with you. Thank you so much, everyone. It's 8:21, and we're going to close this down because I know it's bedtime for some of you all, because it's bedtime for me. And so we will see you tomorrow and Sunday this week. And we have something going on every month of the year this year with our sponsors, AARP Virginia. They are the best. Tune in. Thanks so much. Have a great evening. Bye-bye now.